Hey guys, this is Kyle and Adam at ProjectionHub, and in today's kind of edition of what we typically would call SBA burning questions, we are going to be talking to Adam here about like a frequently asked question that someone who owns a small business and is trying to hopefully sell that business at some point might be asking themselves as they navigate that process. And so, just as a reminder, at ProjectionHub, we help people create financial projections, business plans, and help them kind of navigate the SBA loan process, which are all things that are commonly required for buying a business. And so during that process, we are seeing a lot of the seller side of that and what's kind of expected of the seller, what needs to be gathered during that process. And so today's question for Adam, that someone who owns a business, so if you're out there and you own a business, that you might be wondering is, how long does it actually take to sell a business? Like from the point you decide you want to do that and you need to start preparing the things that are required for that, how long can they realistically expect until, they're signing closing documents and getting paid and making that transition?
Yeah, so I think the answer is it depends on a lot of factors. But if you were really well prepared and you had, let's say you have your last 3 tax returns are done and ready to go, you could list with a business broker, list a business for sale with a business broker. And if it's a attractive business, you could get, I've been hearing about deals getting 50 or 60 LOIs, letters of intent to purchase really quickly. So, it could be really quick if you have a really strong business. I think and so if I say really quick, let's call it 90 days from like listing to closing, kind of on the fastest you could expect. And that would be, if I'm going to look at it from the perspective of if you're using an SBA loan, if the buyer is going to be using an SBA loan to buy. So you would get under LOI with the buyer on an agreed upon sales price. They're going to go find a lender. That lender's going to do underwriting and due diligence. And that probably takes 30 to 45 days to get an approval, and then 30 to 45 days to actually close after they have an approval. So I think 90 days is kind of your fastest closing timeframe. It could be way longer than that though. And I think that's what folks really run into, is there could be a whole bunch of work that needs to be done on the front end to provide all of the financial documentation that a buyer is going to want just in order to get ready. And then the other thing that you may find out is, once you start going through the process, you might realize that based on our financial results, we're not going to be able to get the price that we want. So if you say, hey, I need $1 million for this business for me to be willing to sell it. Well, that price is going to be based on the cash flow of the last 3 years of tax returns. So if your last year didn't cash flow well at that price point, it's not even just enough to say like, oh, well, let's work one more year. You probably have to work several more years for that year that didn't cash flow to like get out of the view of the lender.
Got to change the trend. The trend line needs to change.
Yeah. So if you had a bad year and it didn't cash flow, and that was like 3 years ago and the last 2 years did, you're probably okay. But if the most recent year did not cash flow at the price point that you want, like you've got a couple of years. So I think that's the thing I keep seeing sellers run into, is like they say, oh, I'm ready to sell. This is the price point I want. And I'm like, yeah, your last tax return doesn't support that from an SBA lender perspective. And so you're just got to wait it out if you want that price, or agree to a lower price point.
So there's a lot of variables in there that could delay the process. And when we say process, it's just like, once you've made the decision you would like to sell your business, between that point and the day where you actually do it, it's gonna depend upon like how much work needs to be done to get the business in a sellable state. It's not even the specific process of like the document or like the paperwork of working through it with a buyer. A lot of the time is like you and the business and getting it ready to sell. And how far away are you from that point to get what you want out of the business? And, it's probably worth saying, like, depending upon what your motive is for selling, like if you're desperate and you need to sell it, if you're just ready to be retired and be done with it, like if you're willing to discount the price, that can like significantly speed things up, because that's probably starts to become the issue. Is it's like, how far off are you and the buyer, like in what the buyer can get a loan for, realistically for that. So, that's can be a whole nother video in itself, is talking about what price is realistic and what's going to go into that. But that's probably just a big component of it. If you want $1 million and the seller and their party and their entourage says, it's not worth more than 750, then you either got to like you said, take the time, back off for a couple of years, work on things to make sure you can get it ready for that price, or you like take it on the chin and take the haircut on the price and you get out of the business quicker that way.
One more alternative there too is that you could be the bank. So you could seller finance it. And if you're willing to do that, then you've got a lot of options, because then buyers are going to be, you open up the world of buyers because they don't have to qualify for an SBA loan, and your deal doesn't have to qualify for an SBA loan. So now it's really just find a buyer who's willing to agree upon that price, and they're going to pay you over time on a seller note. They'll pay you each month until they've paid the purchase price. So you could do that, but yeah.
That's an interesting perspective that I don't think a lot of people who are going to sell a business put themselves in the shoes of. Like if you know your business and to you it has a lot of value and you see what the value is to it, but that's not the same value that determines the price for someone else. And largely someone's ability to get approved for the financing and the funds they need to buy your business isn't about them. I mean, some component of it is about them, right? Their experience, their credit score, like some of those things are about them, but mostly it has to do with your business, not them. So like someone's ability to buy your business has way more to do with you and your business than it does them and their situation as they approach that. And I don't think a lot of sellers are like, and they're in the business and they're operating it. And if they're getting paid and it's worked, like that's not really probably what's on the forefront of their mind on what's determining that. But that is, I think, a mind shift, like a mindset shift that probably has to happen as you approach those last few years or whatever you want to be in the business. You got to start thinking about it. Like, how do you make sure it's valuable to someone else and to a lender and not just to what it's given you or produced for you? Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
My recommendation, I guess, would be if you're thinking about selling your business, like have a conversation with us or with a business broker, like to have a conversation early to get an idea of like, how much could I sell this for? And if it's not the number that you want, what do you need to do? And how long is that going to take to get to that point? Because it's always just painful to see when sellers like, okay, I'm ready to sell. And then you're like, ooh, it's like, you got to put in 3 more years. Like what, Right. So have the conversation before you're ready to have the conversation, I think is really helpful.
And to make that available to whoever's watching this video, like more often than not, like our experience and what we're doing every day is helping people on the other side of the table, like the buyers, the people who are trying to actually acquire businesses, like yours. And we're doing like all of the things we're vetting and calculating and preparing are the exact types of things we're talking about. So like, we have the experience, and what we do all the time is to like take a look at what your business is, take a look at what your business is and determine what it's going to look like for a lender or for a buyer. And so you can kind of be prepared for that. So like no formal offer, just if you want to reach out to us at support@ProjectionHub.com and kind of share a little bit about, your business and your scenario and kind of your timeline you're interested in. Just get some kind of unfiltered feedback on things to be aware of and how prepared we might think you are to get the purchase price you want, and do our best to help you out navigating that. So you can reach us at support@ProjectionHub.com, and we would be happy to chat about that. And we will see you in the next version of this video and the next seller question we have to answer.
Thanks.